Hello. So in this video, I'm going to give you another lesson plan, this time for teaching analysis. So as with a lot of these lesson plan videos, I've made a video before about analysis as such, but this is a lesson plan for how you would go about teaching this, or how I would go about teaching this at any rate. So basically, when I'm teaching analysis, the first thing that I tend to do is to ask my students to explain what analysis is. So, I mean, I'll have had them watch my video, I'll have had them read sections of the textbook or whatever it is about analysis for homework the night before, so they'll have some sense of exactly what this is. But I want to start by having them explain it in their own words. What is the process of analysis, or what is it that this term means? And so once we've got a pretty good definition, we'll move on to practicing analysis. So I like to show my students a commercial. Commercials are good because they're short, so you can play them 2 times, even 3 times if you really feel the need to, but I think playing it twice is enough. Just when I taught this lesson 3 days before filming this video, I used a 1970s RC Cola commercial, which I'll link in the description below, which is basically about a guy who leaves his job in the corporate world and goes to run a small general store in Cascade, Idaho, because the thing, what's good enough for other folks ain't good enough for him and his RC, as the song tells us, as the jingle tells us. So we'll watch this, and the first time I tell my students, just watch it, get a sense of what's going on. The second time, you're going to try and remember as many details as you can. So what are you seeing? What are you hearing? Remember as much as you can. And so after we watch it 2 times, and I'll remind them between the viewings. So after the first time we watch it, I'll remind them, all right, this time you're going to try and remember as many details as you can. After we do that, we start with some of the basic analytical questions that you would use in rhetorical analysis or evaluation. And this is where it gets a little bit trickier, because usually students right off get the purpose of this is to sell RC Cola issue. So there's no problem there. When we get to the audience, there's often more divergence. And part of the question becomes, how well have you taught your students to think about specific audiences? So, some of the audiences students tend to come up with, well, I'll leave it because you may or may not choose to use the same RC Cola commercial that I do. I like it, you don't have to like it. Basically any commercial can work. But you ask your students to figure out which audience or audiences this is addressing. And again, these are sort of fundamental analytical components for any sort of rhetorical analysis or evaluation. And then you ask them what details they remember. What did they see? What did they hear? It can be big things, it can be small things. What did you see? Let's break down this commercial into its component parts. What's going on here? We're not interpreting at this stage. We're just sort of listing, here's the stuff that's in the commercial. And then you ask students why that stuff is in the commercial. So why did RC Cola choose to do these particular things? Why did they choose to set this in the mountains? Why do they contrast this guy going out and buying a rural general store against the corporate humdrum existence he had been living. Why do they show both a can of RC Cola and a bottle of RC Cola? Why do they show smiling faces, etc.? Why did the commercial make the choices that it made? And students interpret it. Students can generally figure out, okay, they made this choice because they wanted to achieve this effect. Here's what this ad is going for. And so that's really useful for analysis. And then the next stage for me, and I think this works really, really well with the RC Cola commercial, but you can do this with a lot of other commercials, is you ask them, why? What's the context of this? Because one of the things, so like in particular, what's the rhetorical situation? What are the cultural values or assumptions or ideals reflected in this commercial? And that's a stage further than students typically think about things when they're analyzing on their own. So like with this RC Cola commercial, we have in American popular culture these stereotypes and ideals and images of small town life, that it's associated with sort of some kind of freedom. It's associated with authenticity, with neighborliness, with self-reliance, individualism, etc., etc. Whether or not these stereotypes is true is irrelevant to the fact that we have this cultural ideal. And I think that was more prevalent in the early 70s when this RC Cola ad came out than it even is today. But without that context, the ad becomes much harder to interpret. Like if you don't know that the small town rural lifestyle is supposed to represent freedom and individualism and choosing something that's better than the sort of general corporate city life, whatever it is. Like if you don't know those sets of values, then the commercial, it becomes very difficult to interpret the commercial. So that's the thing, is I would argue that all commercials have built into them certain sets of assumptions. And if we can get students to read the culture, read the sort of zeitgeist of the consumers that commercial is targeting, and to figure out why it's targeting them in these particular ways, I think that's a really sophisticated approach to analysis, and you push students into thinking about that. Why is this making the choices it's making? Not just in the sense of how is it trying to sell, but in the sense of why is it trying to sell in the particular ways that it's selling? Why does it think that why did the creators of this ad think that the particular appeals that they're making are going to be effective? What about their target audience leads to that conclusion? And so this is the kind of skill set that you want your students developing in terms of being able to analyze texts critically.